So, look, it's wonderful to chat to you. First time ever face to face. You know, we've been friends on Facebook for quite some time. And yeah, I find it these days that I meet a lot of cool people. Whereas back in the 90s, before the internet and stuff like that, I would meet cool people randomly, who knows where, sometimes at the bus stop. Um, but nowadays, and then maybe we'd connect on digital media and then continue relationship like that. But nowadays it's a lot more like digital first, and then we sort of like get on a video call. So it's very sort of inspirational to be talking to you first time on a video call. And as with anything else, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'm sure whatever we talk about is going to be wonderful and lovely. You know, how do you introduce yourself these days? Or like the question I like to ask is, who are you? You know?
When who asks?
Okay. I am.
When who asks?
I am.
Well, I'm Andres.
Okay. And what does that mean?
Ask another question, like if we were to on the sidewalk.
Sure. How's it going?
Cool, awesome. Okay, well, so introductions are always different.
Yeah.
And the one that I want to avoid the most is the one-word introduction, where I concentrate everything that I am or do into one word. I don't like that because it's very unfair. But the general public out on the sidewalk is very happy with that method. Because for the mind is very easy. We're on the sidewalk. Hey, what do you do? I'm a dentist. And my mind is in peace, has the answer, and it has already placed you in the box of dentists.
Yeah.
And you're just one more of them, like a blender or a refrigerator. So I don't like that. So I go against that, of course, you know, my beautiful rebel. And I go into the almost opposite of the explanations or versions of that. Now, if I'm in a bad mood, oh my God, this is going to come out too rough and nasty, because I kind of like just I want to destroy the paradigm. And if in a beautiful mood, it is absolutely awesome. So my work would be to like, hey, Andres, can you please keep these things beautiful so that every engagement is awesome and start something that you're actually interested in, or then you can actually provide value.
What makes you angry?
My thoughts about the things that I am frustrated about and I can't achieve just yet.
Okay. Interesting. What is anger to you? Like what's the function of anger?
Anger. It's so beautiful that you mentioned that word, because anger for me is the biggest motivator ever. So anger, most would place it in the bag of bad things, but I don't, it's not necessarily, we don't need to judge it. We can just actually use it. I hold everything that has a balance of light and dark. So anger will have the balance, beautiful things and horrible things. And of course, you know, mastery would be in managing and again, focusing on the light part of the or instead of the dark. Anger comes when I try to control things outside of my control. So my ego would be, and especially my younger self ego would be, why can't I get this like this? And anger comes, you know, because my younger self ego wanted to have an image, you know, a reputation, an identity, and it needed all control, all of these things. And I see my parents still struggle with that, or not struggle. That's because their reputation, personality, identity embarks a lot of things out of their control. So yeah, that brings anger.
So like, are you thinking about life in terms of some sort of longer term legacy or purpose or vision, or how are you approaching life these days?
A long term, but let's expand on that miserable one word answer. Um, I gotta do something that makes sense.
Mm.
I'm gonna be here for some time.
Mm-hmm.
I am in my character, role, or persona. So I'm placed, let's say, within a group of people in a certain position, location. So I'm at we're all at a particular special role
Mm-hmm.
part, and I gotta do something that actually makes sense for me and
Mm-hmm.
for others, so that so that I honor everything that's placed there.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, totally.
For me, not honoring everything that surrounds or that is there, it's just it's pathetic, really. It would be like, no, I don't care about who's around me, what's happening, what they're doing. I'm just gonna do what I want. um as I said it, I think I still operate like that, but I've shaped that so that it makes the best sense. So that okay, so my favorite sentences around there would be, I want to be of value, I want to
Mm-hmm.
provide value, I want to provide my best value to who?
Mm-hmm.
To everybody that's around me, to
Yeah,
the collective, to the
yeah.
people, to the ones that provided me with the glasses, with the earphones, with the t-shirt, and with the roof,
Mm-hmm.
because they so beautiful they did that. I want to provide them with my absolute best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So look, I watched a bunch of your videos on YouTube, and you shared a lot of yourself in a very vulnerable way. Although I don't really like that word vulnerability, it's just a lot more like open way, without any kind of holes barred, so to speak. But one of the things that picked up is that you've done lots of architecture work, and that you're coming from that creator slash designer, space, in terms of your profession. It's not necessarily who you are, but one thing that I find it that whatever people have gravitated towards as their profession, they've done it for one and another reason, for a reason that is their interest. I don't think like anyone can really work, let's say, in one field for 15 years while absolutely hating that thing, right? And it's more like whether they're enjoying the environment in which they're working and the projects that they're working on versus are they really enjoying the craft, so to speak. So what the reason why I'm talking about this is not that I want to talk about careers or anything like that. I'm more like interested to know to what extent do you see things like architecture as a thing that is dear to you as a thing, and how do you see architecture in a grander scheme of your life?
Only to be used when it is really needed.
Okay.
I compare it with other things that I can do. I can do, let's say that I'm going to compare it to 5 services that I can provide to me or others. I like comparing them into which one is of more value and which one is more needed and which one I am more specialized in. And when I ask those questions, I find that I can provide some things that nobody else can. So I find those very valuable, especially if, of course, I convince myself and consider them to be really needed, and I consider myself able to provide the needed value. So I place a lot of value there, which is the furthest opposite away from the, what's the word? The commodity. The commodity is just one more dentist. So uh, when I try to come up with the list of greatest creators on planet Earth, greatest creators in history, the list is actually not that long.
Mm-hmm.
It surprised me because I would have expected to have a list of 3,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
but no, I'm very far from getting there. Actually, when I list people that are the masters of the masters, sometimes they didn't even create something. Yes, they did something, but not necessarily left behind a created creation, something that can provide value to you and me today. So you see, there's the difference between the master and the master that creates. So yes, I focus absolutely and completely on the master that creates a creation that is left behind, or that is just out there, produced and created, that can help and provide value to others.
So the reason why I ask you about architecture is that architecture in its kind of career form, right, is, let's say, you are designing buildings or spaces which people might live in, or there's broader range of things that you could be designing, which are bridges and all that kind of stuff, roads perhaps, all that kind of stuff. But architecture on a more sort of metaphysical level is something that can be quite nicely, I find it lends itself quite nicely towards lateral transposition into mindset coaching and things like that. So for example, in architecture, you've got the shape of things, right? You've got the building blocks, right, that create a structure. You've got the interior, which is like the inner self, right? And exterior, how do you look out to the rest of the world, or external factors. You've got the kind of the balance, the ground, like foundations, right, on which things are built out. Internal usability, the way the experience of a space and object, how that's being used by other people and how other people interact with it, and so on. So even though I'm not an architect in a qualified sense, I find myself that things like, for example, information architecture, which is like how meanings string together and what is what comes before what, and so on, and how things are organized, becomes very more and more, if anything, relevant to me and my life and the way I organize myself and my life and the way in which everyone else kind of interacts with me, in which I interact with others. So do you ever kind of think about that kind of stuff and see that sort of lateral transposition between the two?
As hearing you speak, I came aware of something that I wasn't really that present aware, which is intention and the exterior agenda and the real inner agenda. So architecture is, of course, for me and for many, is one of the most fascinating things there is. It's absolutely incredibly fascinating. And there are a million of decisions whenever you're designing anything, even if it's just a phone booth, there are a million of decisions. Yeah. And all of the decisions are based on a intention. What's the intention? Many times, even in architecture, many times, and I bet you maybe most today, are unconscious of the real intentions. And they're just, and we fall victim to what humans fall victim to all the time, which is just do what you did last time or do what others are doing. Yeah. So let's say if you're a servant in the architecture office and they tell you do a phone booth, most probably you will look first for authority to tell you what material, color, and shape and size to do. You're surrendering all the work that was supposed to be put into this very first, and you're gonna just produce one other phone booth as the one you have in your mind already. Yeah. The archetype. So, but the very best architecture, of course, is the one that we see, like where the designer stops and say, hey, wait, let's ask ourselves deep questions about what we're going to do here and why. So we don't just do the typical house, but why? What's the intention of everything? What's the intention of the material? What's the intention behind the size? What's the intention behind permeability or visibility or position, orientation, connection, shape, color? Absolute, there's a million decisions. And intention. So intention reveals, it's so important because let's say many of the architectural projects today are actually using a false facade for their actual real intentions. Architecture, like all industries, has fallen victim to the money-seeking program, which is, wait, no, a house that from the curb appeal from the road looks like, and then when you come to the interior and the side, it looks like And online, it looks, and we have fake wood, fake stone, fake this, fake that, to fake it, a fake facade, so that it looked just in the seek of not even value, but money. Because, you know, fake wood will never provide more value than real wood. Real wood has better value. It has 50 better properties than fake wood. So it falls, the industry falls victim to, like, we're not sincere. It's not an integrity. Integrity would be, this is the intention, and this is done, and this is expressed, and this is shown, and this is valued. No, it's a whole drama of covert, of outer agenda versus inner agenda. I'm talking about the vast majority, bad quality, regular standard, money-seeking architecture versus good architectural kind.
Okay, so this actually brings me, and obviously we're having this conversation. Like, I had no idea what kind of questions I'm going to ask you, but you know, things kind of naturally flow off one another. You know, I recently went to, we signed up to this like English heritage thing, right? So you can, like, when you sign up to English Heritage Trust, you can visit various kind of English heritage monuments and things like that. And we went to some villa that was owned by a mistress of King George, right? And then you go through and you visit this place, and like, oh, here she did this, here she did that. That's her bedroom and all that kind of stuff. And like inside, man, some of the rooms are just like, wow, right? And this was only a mistress, right, of this king, right? And he provided a lot of money for this, but then over time, she actually kind of built her own sort of income streams and stuff. But then they got us into like the staircase, right? It's like the staircase bit. And they were like, well, this staircase is actually, when you're talking about wood, right? The person that's leading the tour, she goes, this staircase is very significant because King George, when this lady was building the house and she wanted to have the staircase, he said, I'm going to ensure that you have the grandest staircase out of anyone, right? So he ordered this kind of really rare wood to be chopped from South America somewhere. I think it was in Argentina or somewhere. And to be shipped specifically for this staircase, right? And you look at the staircase, it's like, wow, man, both in terms of the artwork that it's done, as well as you can knock on the wood and you just still feel like it's been plucked right this moment, you know? And he goes, they chopped so much wood for this staircase that they almost started a war with Argentina over it, right? And so what I'm trying to ask you here is, there is this thing, and I'm going to be writing probably like a series of articles on this topic of not what I'm calling, but what's been coined as a phrase called turbo folk. Okay, turbo folk meaning when you take like a traditional element and you infuse a whole load of technology into it, you get this kind of on the steroids type situation, right? Where like you take a traditional piece of folk music and then you turn it into techno. So it's like, you know, some mellow folk song suddenly sounds like, you know? And so, but there is this notion of turbo folk that seems to be happening throughout the civilization in different realms. And in some sense, that staircase was a kind of turbo folk, where it was like, you could have just built a staircase probably out of regular English pine wood or, you know, oak or whatever. It's probably fine. But this guy went so far out of his comfort zone to source these woods for the staircase, to the point where he started almost a war with another country. So, you know, to what extent is it appropriate or inappropriate to use these kind of fake materials for things, or like faking it versus being real? Talk to me about that, basically.
This is a beautiful question, brother. Yes. And before answering, I'm going to mention something that we kind of always miss, but it's always present. So behind the stair project, that stair project, there's a leader. There's a leader. And we don't even know if the intention of the leader was just taking this lady to bed, having sex with this lady, for example, you see, because sometimes we humans go through incredible and ridiculous missions or agendas for a completely different reason. Can you see it?
Yeah.
The other day I was asking one of my friends, and we were talking about grandparents. They're all dead now, but we're talking about them. And his grandparent told him, "No, dude, the reason I married my wife, which is your grandma, was just to get in bed with her." See, a completely different reason behind the action that was actually done, right?
Yeah.
And we can actually trace this to every single of our own actions. So let's go back to your question is one of sustainability. And that's there is the most unsustainable project that exists. And one question that can very help us see this with clarity is what happens if everybody does it? See, when we look at animal species, cows, they all go through the same treatment. They're all cows and they all have the same access, the same grass, the same space, the same, when we're looking at the herd, right? So actually what society, what humans did is very unethical, which is like if one of the cows convinced the rest of whatever story to be millionaire. See, and now among the herd of cows, there's one that's millionaire and the rest are just cows. What story would this cow have invented? And in my mind, that story has the words salary, employment, and other words like that, just so that to achieve that from others, So, but to the question of sustainability, to the pure answer of this, what happens if everybody does it? No, if we all do the stair like that, we destroy the planet. So the most sustainable way to approach, that's a part of a dwelling, of your own dwelling, your own house, which is something we humans don't even approach, don't even do, is you build your house and you clean your house. In other words, let's go through the maintenance first. Your house, it would be best if it's achieved that you by yourself can provide the maintenance of it. We know that this is impossible in all cases, right? There's an old lady, she needs help with the antenna, right? But we can approach that goal of so that the person, the dweller, is able to do the maintenance of its own dwelling. That's key, because when we pull it to the opposite, it's very toxic, which is I need 40 servants to take care of the maintenance of my space. This is the opposite of sustainable. And now when it comes to the building, let's try to approach it also. We know old lady cannot build a house, so she needs help. But you and me, the most sustainable way for you and me to approach dwelling is that I can build my own dwelling and that I can sustain my own dwelling. That is beautiful sustainability principles practiced nowhere. Nobody practiced this. We're so confused on how we design buildings, on the purpose and the intention. Everything is off that mark. But that's how the planet is just a room. And the words sustainable and self-sustainable are absolutely key in the way that we design and do and perform and design anything. Yes, we gotta be sustainable. Of course, it's natural. Actually, the opposite. If your house improves the health of your lot, you're winning. If your house leaves the health of your lot, I mean ecological health of the 5 kingdoms, the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the human kingdom, and the soul kingdom. If you leave them all at the same level, that's sustainable. But you can improve it. But right now, we destroy it. So, of course, this is what we're seeing on the TV today. Fucking destruction all over.
So, yeah, I just prodded. Like the thing is, for me, I can say to you, I'm not an architect, but one of the books that shaped my life in some senses is when I was in Bosnia, as a child. I was reading this book about the grandest architecture in the world. For some reason, I had this almost like a encyclopedia with loads of pictures, right? So it had things like Taj Mahal in there, and it had like Eiffel Tower, which, like, in some sense, like Eiffel Tower is this turbo folk thing that ended up remaining, similar to like London Eye. They built it for like temporal purpose, and then it was kind of like caught on and somehow became quote unquote sustainable. Similar with Millennium Dome, and yesterday we went fishing in East London, and it's all just built in this kind of completely unsustainable way, but it's also ugly, and it's also rushed, and it's also all over the place, right? And it's all like money driven, right? So one thing that came to mind was this. I saw this program about like how Prince Charles, lives his life in Buckingham Palace, and apparently he likes his eggs poached, right? He likes his eggs poached, and he likes to have poached eggs after his hunting trip on Saturdays or whatever. But the eggs have to be the right temperature, right, when he comes back from his hunting trip. So the servants that you mentioned, 47 servants, they're poaching his eggs for him. They start half an hour before he's due to come back, and they're poaching these kind of 20 eggs or whatever. And then if he doesn't come back, they just chuck the eggs away. Yeah. And then they start poaching again. And they keep doing that and chucking it away until he turns up, so that the eggs are ready for him right on time when he turns up, but it's impossible to know when he's going. And so they're just kind of chucking these perfectly fine eggs into the bin. And I'm thinking, my God, this is such a crime, But, that's what happens when someone's got this sort of like king mentality, right? And so the question, sticking to this theme of architecture, in many respects, what I've found to be the case after doing, 15 years of user experience design, which is actually also grounded in architecture, because architects were the first wireframers of things, and the concept of wireframe comes into user experience design, as in wireframing web pages and flows and so on. And then you realize, well, actually, the whole house has got experience to it, so we've got to cater to all the senses and so on. And then I started wondering, a few years back, it's like, what is the architecture of our minds, right? And who is constructing that, and who is in charge of reconstructing that? Yeah. So in many respects, I actually consider myself mind architect. Okay. But what does that phrase bring to you?
Oh, dude, this is such an awesome subject. Absolutely fucking amazing. That's what I dedicate myself to today. To mind architecture. So the way I look at, we humans have it so wrong in so many aspects, and it's fun. And thanks God to that, we have here things to do. Otherwise, we wouldn't. Like pelicans. Pelicans have literally nothing to do because they have the perfect lifestyle. See, they have fish over right there. They just dive and get fish, and they just fly in freedom. You see, but so there's no challenge for them. Our life is more exciting, although they have the perfect freedom. So the way I look at it is, somebody at some point, I don't know who, invented, similar to the cows, invented a method or a sentence or something to say to another one to get them to work under. See, it's like in the Sandlot. If in the Sandlot of kids, one of the kids tells the others, hey, I give you lemons and you build my sandcastle. And they do that. And then he sells the sandcastle. And then he does it. He has more lemons. And he does it again. And then there's one kid with a lot of power and ego and such and shit. And the rest are just servants. And they got used to this. They got used to everybody that was watching from the outside, the newborns, everybody is just watching this and say like, yeah, man, there's only two positions in life. The subjugator and the subjugated. See, the castle owner and the servants, the ones that build it. And it began a game. And that's the game. And then this King Edward with the poached eggs nobody's bad. You see, the subjugator is not bad. The elite is not bad. The servants are not bad. The employees are not bad. Nobody's bad. It's just roles or archetypes of the story that actually needs one to have the other one. Other ones, you remove servants, there's nobody in power.
They're both dependent on each other. They're both dependent on each other.
Story. Yeah. It's just a story. And let's say now we're just learning that the story doesn't really work the best, not for the king and not for the servants, because this poaching eggs of king, he he could probably had way more fun if he did his eggs himself. You see? His kids are gonna be looking. We're humans, and many species are always looking for a role model. How do they do it? How do they do it? How do they do it? And we just then do either subjugator or subjugated. We don't know anything else. So his kids are gonna go like, no, for me to eat eggs, I need 40 servants. They're poaching every half an hour and such. You know, it's like, really, man? You just go to the kitchen, you just grab the egg, poof, and you would enjoy. You become the master. You can please yourself. There's, all sorts of. So it just depends on what we focus on. And when you mention mind architecture, the way that humans operate today was not designed, was not okay, no, it was, but not consciously. It was designed by the pharaoh, by Cleopatra, by the king, in order to have everything underneath. So because I want the best eggs, man, but we can have even more fun. When I look at people in power and riches, I honestly don't know. I don't know how can they survive with the amount of toxic, pleasurable addictions that they have at their reach. Me, when I have zero reach, I still have enemy toxic addictions chasing me, pulling me away from my beautiful purpose that most people don't have clear. Therefore, they're distracted by these things instead of focused on a purpose. So purpose is the key of all of this. And then, yes, you people like you and me in this generation of conflict, we have a responsibility and the possibility of having fun by doing mind architecture, designing which is the best way, the healthiest, emotionally, energetically, and the rest for us to just be and live. And I hold the answer to that, or the mind architecture, in the clarity of identity, the clarity of purpose, and the clarity of creation.
So the topic of creation is very dear to my heart, and I was jotting down some, not like some sort of it's not some sort of like ritual, it's just kind of literally on my iPad writing down, okay, let's jot down some intentions, for this year. And I got to, I started with financial. I'm consciously prioritizing financial aspect. I prioritized it last year and worked really well. So I thought, like, I'll continue prioritizing that, because in that financial abundance, there is then just more capacity and freedom and capability of like impacting more things. So I prioritize financial, then then social, okay, then physical, and then creative. Okay, so in those kind of four buckets, my intentions were written down. But when I got to creative, I actually started really thinking about quantifying things down. So I said, this year, I'm going to do 1,000 videos, okay? 1,000 videos. And they'll be across different subjects and different, channels and so on. And there will be some might be 1-2 minutes, some might be like an hour, 2 hours and so on, but I'll do 1,000 videos, right? And then it's like really started getting into this whole like creative thing, right? And it's like, what other things can I create, that are, that can be, looked back at, in 2021, and sort of for me to go like, well, okay, that's a thing, that I did, okay? And because I am working with a lot of people on this kind of like mind re-architecting, and then, a lot of the results that they achieve, they feel like, they'll say stuff like, I am now feeling blissful all the time. Great, amazing thing, right? But in many respects, I don't feel like I really can claim that as my own creation, because they created that for themselves. And it's very, very fluffy. It's very, very intangible, right? I can tell that in their demeanor, right? When people speak to me now, it's like they're smiling, they're happy, they're present, and so on, as opposed to, they're kind of like a detached, depressed sort of self that they started with. But it's the notion of creating things that can be accounted for, that are also intentional and purposeful and meaningful is something that I'm getting more and more into, certainly this year. And, you know, this video that we're recording is part of that, right? So talk to me a little bit more about creation and how you see it, and what's in the blend for you.
Okay. Thank you for asking that, because creation is my absolute ultimate specialty. I downloaded my biggest clarity on creation on my one and only trip on ayahuasca, and it came to me with an amount of clarity that you can imagine. So I tried bringing this knowledge from there, but over there it's another language and everything's different. So it can't be done like that. So afterwards, what I did is I cannot write this with words. I'm just going to draw it. So I drew, I think, 20 little diagrams on what consists creation. And if you ask me today, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, Cheops in Giza, has we're all guessing all the time, what's it for? Is it a tomb? Is it an antenna? Is it an electric plant? Like a lot of things. But my favorite one is one that I created myself, which is no. Wait, these dudes or somebody, whoever, left that big pyramid over there, which I've never been to, and I would love to go, for us to understand creation and creation only. So the planet goes through years, and that thing's still standing. See, the Empire State will come down. The Golden Gate will come down, but that pyramid's still standing because it's the best example of sustainable long-term creation. When we write a poem in a paper, that'll last very, very little time. The pyramid lasts a long time. So creation works like this. When I ask people, hey, what's your best creation? See, my business is all about create your greatest creation, which is the greatest thing that you can create from here to death. See, so that we benefit from that, your greatest creation. When I ask people, what's your greatest creation? People ask, well, myself. Or people ask, well, my kids. See, and that's an easy answer, and it's failing us from actually really going into the possibility of what that creation really is. No. Creation is, of course, following your own intuition, following your own orders and not somebody else's. Following another person's intuition and not yours is crazy. Following another person's orders and not yours is crazy. So following your intuition also align with your identity and purpose. So following that. Second, of course, you own your creation. Nobody else owns it, not a boss, so you own it. Third, is created with the product of your effort. So you, with your efforts, create something. And all of this aligns with service. Service can be provided. I'm a massage, a massage professional. All that aligns. But the thing is, we do a massage and nothing is left created after that in the material, tangible world. But the pyramid is. So creation is something that is left in the material, tangible world, something that's left there that has a purpose, that has a value for us, the collective society, humans. And since it's aligned with your identity and purpose, this is among all of the creations that you can do with that, there's a top one, a best one, a bigger one. And this is your single most important, most valuable, most powerful contribution to your own world. If you're the center of your world, this is your biggest contribution to you. Your world includes everything and everybody, space and time. So this is the best thing that you can possibly do. And I find this absolutely so magical. So let's say coming into first steps into that big pyramid of Cheops, we are all the time working with triggers, and especially visual. Whatever we come through our eyes and visual, boom, it fires, it starts a cycle, whatever it is. I see the toothbrush, it starts a cycle. I see the bread, it starts a cycle. I see the sun come up, it starts a cycle. Everything is just mainly through here. So the pyramid, we got to leave a rock. We got to leave one rock out there in the field, one rock. Because the next time we look at that rock, holy shit, rock. And it begins the cycle. Put another rock. Okay, put a second rock. Okay, then next day you see 2 rocks. Okay, cycle, put another rock and put another rock. If we do just 1 shovel a day, one shovel is just 1 little hole, it's so tiny. But if you do that every single day, like you do your brush your teeth every single day, or you take a shower every single day, if you do the shovel every single day, I want to calculate the size of the hole that we would be opening, because it would be just ridiculously huge. So the same thing with the stones. You know, if we just put a stone every day, of course, the result is a huge creation, a huge creations. And your greatest creation can be started when you're 10, or for sure before you're 15 years old, because by then your purpose in life is absolutely, your emotional purpose is totally clear. So just imagine the results of focusing all your energy, time, attention, money, blood, sweat, and tears into one thing, into one creation. It makes me an expert, and I provided a great creation. That's it.
Okay, so that's triggered another question, which is around the idea that it links to somewhat infinity, right? But like more deeper we go into one subject, like for example, you could take subject of mathematics, and you start with like, oh, there's addition, there's subtraction, there's division, there's multiplication. It's like, okay, well, you already know quite a lot of maths just by knowing those 4 types of function. And then you build out on that, and there's a square rooting, squaring, this, that, and that. And then so suddenly you can go into maths as a single subject to infinity and beyond, right? And so more you focus on something, more you realize there is infinity in that single strand. But then you could say, well, how about outside of maths? There's psychology, there is philosophy, there is biology, there's chemistry, there's architecture, there's design, there's all this stuff. You can go horizontally into infinity. And so, you know, if I'm thinking about creators such as, for example, Leonardo da Vinci, you know, he was a sort of polymathic guy. And someone like Nikola Tesla, although he focused in on, you know, electricity and things like that, he still created loads of different types of inventions off the back of electrically powered type of things. And, you know, there's certainly now, you know, the kind of the remote controls, Wi-Fi, all sorts of things. And so to what extent, how do we determine the scope of our focus, right? And any thoughts on that, right?
It all depends on what game we want to play. It all depends on what experience we want to experience. So let's throw you and me into the sandlot. And in the sandlot, we can do 2 things. Let's say that we're going to build a pyramid. And when we're not building the pyramid, we are in recess, in break, in resting, let's say. So there are those 2 kinds of activities, building and resting, building and resting. We got to choose how much time, how much time to spend in each, just based on what we want. So let's say an experiment when we're looking at eternity is, yes, humans can devote all the energy to become more modernized until we become like Star Wars and super spatial and everything. Or we don't have to do a thing and just like rest in the tropics and just enjoy the fruit from the tree. We can do both things. Both are totally valid. One would be like you and me, and like if we're spending all the time in the pyramid building. And the other, and versus the other time resting, just resting, enjoying, being, and playing. And we got to choose. And we can choose. It depends on what we enjoy better, because we don't have to evolve, but we can. And we don't have to rest, but we can. So there's at some point, there's gonna be a balance. If we have nothing, yes, we need to evolve something until we have comfortable, let's say, shelter, food, and the basics. But at some point, it becomes ridiculous to exaggerate the amount of work and evolution, because we start suffering instead of enjoying life. So there comes beautiful balance, right? Balance where we gotta be, and probably maybe Zen Buddhists, your yogis are the ones, the experts in this, which is what is the ideal balance of, let's say, you and me, of how much time we put on building, creating an effort versus the opposite one, you know, yang versus yin. Because we're going to find a point where there's a beautiful balance and we just work enough to provide for this time, and both complement each other, and it works. Just do you see where I'm
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
to?
Mm-hmm.
But we lose awareness of this concept in the current society, where we have a lot of subjugation and servants, where there's money seeking, and we just want to make everything more efficient, make more money. I don't know who's the guy that wrote a book in, I think in the 1970s or 80s. The book was, the subject was, there's nothing bad with making the objective of a company just to maximize profit. There's nothing bad. We can actually do that. And at that point, a lot of things changed in capitalism, the market, and corporate law, where the focus was that shareholder profit instead of the original purpose of the company, providing ice cream for the neighborhood, let's say. So we lost the awareness of, and now it is very difficult for us to concentrate and evaluate, hey, how much do we want to work and how much do we want to play? See, and this is, now you can have, personally, one person can have clarity on this very well if you just, let's say, quit all activities and from scratch you dedicate your time to this, and you can have and you can learn that beautiful balance. But if you're plugged into the current system society, it's going to be very difficult, and you see people struggling with that time, work versus life balance, and because there's not awareness on why are we doing things we're doing.
Yeah, and one thing that I've come to realize is that, but few things, right? One is that there's no such thing as doing nothing, right? Even if you are quote unquote doing nothing, you're still alive and you are doing life. Okay, so if you're just sitting in meditative position, you're still breathing and you're effectively meditating. Okay, now a lot of people associate that with relaxing, but at the same time it's like you're still living life, you're still doing that thing, and the quote unquote work, which is a sort of word that I don't like, just like vulnerability, is all work is being on your purpose, really, in the truest sense. So if you are relaxing, as per se, you are working on rebuilding yourself or rebuilding your energies, if you're thinking that way. Or you can realize that, like, for example, right now we're conversing, and this to me is very relaxing and meditative, experience and activity. It's play, but at the same time, it's also producing a video that we'll share, and God only knows what kind of impact that's going to have, right? So work does not have to be taxing; it can be relaxing, and also, in fact, that's the kind of work that tends to produce the best results, because you are actually being completely present in that activity and so on. So I found this from way back, even when I was kind of like completely unconsciously doing these things, that, for example, I could be, let's say, studying my maths paper when I was a student, and I'll get to a point where like my mind is like completely smashed, it's like I've got too many numbers running around in my head. So I'd be like, I need to take a break, but I don't really want to sit down and do nothing. So instead I'd go and practice piano for an hour, which would be relaxing compared to doing maths homework. And then after that comes to a point where it's like, I'm not really sure what I'm playing anymore. So I then go off and maybe write a diary entry, and do that for like half an hour, which is relaxing compared to both maths and piano. And then I go back to maths eventually. I go like, wow, this is now relaxing because there's a structure to maths. It's like 2 + 2 = 4. You just follow a process. It's like, that's quite relaxing compared to having to think, what am I going to write, or what am I going to play next, or is this good enough, and so on. So actually switching activities and going from activity to activity is constantly relaxing compared to the previous activity, but you're also constantly being creative and productive and constantly working, and you're creating the output. And at any point in time, you are both relaxing and building yourself. Thoughts, comments?
Okay. The whole subject is one of purpose for me, which is what to do and why. Which is, why do I do, if I'm between piano and maths, why to do this or why to do that? And again, I'm going to criticize us humans on that we're very lost when it comes, or currently when it comes to purpose. So what we see out there trending can be do what you love, can be do your passion. And from my own personal experience, I found that those two are not as valuable or as powerful or as motivating as their opposites, which is what hurts you the most. What did life never give you? Because these they reveal to you something very, very important thing in your life, which is oxymoron kind of saying it. It is the most important thing for you in your life. The most important thing is what you care for the most, what you care about, because you only care what you care for. It's really simple, really. And this is not what you like or what. And I don't like using the word you, because it's like I'm talking to you,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm gonna keep on using it probably.
Yeah, sure.
Because I should say it about me. I should say it about me. Because it's what I love and what I like and what I'm good at and where I have talents or where I have experience. All of those are not necessarily, they can be very different from what I care for, what I care about. So to say, in my free time is something very interesting, important to analyze, because in free time, just as it says, free time is where we're free to focus on what we choose. So what do we choose to focus on? A lot of times I was spending my time on escapism, on pleasure and addictions and just to escape my reality, look for, like anything
but this. Yeah, anything but this. Yeah.
Yeah, so escapism. So, but and let's mention some in my life: alcohol, sports, women, social media, whatever, movies. Bring eating. Let's go there. Let's go places. Traveling, entertainment.
Yeah.
Entertainment. The definition of the word entertainment is it's that distract you from. So, but when I started healing all of those reasons, why am I addicted to women? Why am I addicted to alcohol? Why am I was addicted to? And by the way, these are addictions that I can claim no longer have power over me. So why was I addicted to? And when I start healing it, I start clearing up the space for my free time and then able to analyze free time better. So like, oh, free time, what do I do with it? And my natural self started going towards the things I cared for. But why do I care for this? Well, because it hurts me. There is pain. I wanna solve, heal, help, and many times life has never given this to me. I wanted, or I haven't given this to me yet. I wanted, or see, and when we're kids, this domino of emotional dilemma starts. See, my dilemma at 15 was because of the one at 10, because of the one at 5, because of everything starts at the beginning. So your very beginning emotional dilemma when you're a kid is so important because it practically can determine your entire life. And many times we see people doing that, what everything that they do in life is just to escape one experience, to escape their worst fear, to escape something that they lived and experienced when they were young, and they never want to experience that again. They dedicate their entire lives, their identity, their reputation, their efforts, their work, their creations, all to escape one experience, which actually, this experience can actually be your most powerful fuel in order to turn you into your hero version of you. How do you actually conquer that? Use the teaching, learning, and power to provide value to society. So yes, I of course I'm heavily focused then on what I care for the most. What I care for the most has more strength than my talents, my experience, my passions, and my likes. Now I can actually use all of this for my mission, for what I care for the most. I can use my experience, talents, loves, and likes and passions for my purpose, for what I care for the most, for my mission. So it is imperative, very important that we get clarity on our mission, on what we care for, what we care about the most, because this is the biggest driver in your entire life. This is your biggest push, your biggest fuel, your biggest fire, your biggest energizer. This is what drives everything consciously in your life. So you can make it conscious and use all of those other beautiful things for it. And when you center it all and you focus all in one, not two creations, but one, this is your greatest creation. This is your greatest contribution. This is the best thing you can do. You see how beautiful that aligns?
Exactly. And this is exactly, I think we're getting to a very interesting sort of, like a common thread here, which is that it all starts with, like, we spoke at the beginning about anger, right? And sort of what angers you, and you mentioned pain and things like that. And so this is what we found in our Fresh Mind program, right? When we're coaching and guiding people through this, that feelings like shame, guilt, and misery, right? Regret, withdrawal, disappointment, anxiety, fear, and anger. And that anxiety, fear, and anger sits squarely at that ego level. And then also even things like resentment, indifference, and pride are feelings, thoughts, and frequencies and experiences that are pulling us backwards, right, into our past, and sort of pulling us down. Whereas, as people start clearing that out of the way, so personally, like, I don't really feel pain anymore as such, because I realize that all pain is rooted in the mind, right? And it's my own choice to feel pain over, I don't know, somebody called me names or did something to me, quote unquote, and so on. But as people start clearing those feelings and thoughts, and installing things like courage, willingness, empowerment, trust, understanding, resolution, wisdom, love, and joy, and peace, reverence, and enlightenment, as they kind of focus on more of those things, they start actually entering into a zone or a way of life which is a lot more integral, where your passions, love, and skills actually align and integrate and point towards that life purpose. But also you're working from love, wisdom, and joy, and you are no longer driven by pain, anger, and pride, and guilt and shame, and so on. So that's kind of where I've got to myself, having done the process. And previous to that, I would have never believed that was possible, because I always thought that my life would have to include a bunch of pain, a bunch of suffering, a bunch of blah blah blah. And it's like, even speaking to my neighbor from Bosnia that I reconnected with, similar in this kind of call, after 25 years, I was telling him, he goes, "How's life in London?" I said, "Life in London is perfect. It's just that I'm always surrounded by a whole bunch of people who are suffering, even in the greatest city in the world." And he goes, "Yeah, people need suffering until they realize they no longer need suffering." I was like, that's so true, So it's like, you don't need suffering to keep going forward, and very fast paced and very sustainably. So that's a thing that I'm embracing completely, so for 2 years now, and planning absolutely to embrace for the rest of my life. Yeah, what else comes to your mind as we're slowly kind of wrapping this particular, might be an episode of a series of conversations?
One thing that always comes to my mind, which is, now that we have the subject on the table, what to do about it, what to do and how to do it, which is most probably why we're talking. Before mentioning anything, then what comes to your mind?
So what comes to my mind is that there is quite a lot of people who have clocked onto these things that we've discussed and wildly agreed on, and that now it's really about how do those self-sovereign people who realize that they don't really need so much anybody else per se, it's a question of how do those self-sovereign people start working together in ways that are complementary and collaborative without encroaching on individual spaces, so to speak. But to cross-multiply, to use the mathematical term, it's like you're a powerful creator, present guy, amazing guy, love you to bits, and so on. And, you know, so am I. And then the question is, what now? And to me, the most logical thing is that somehow we ought to be collaborating together to cross-pollinate each other's flowers of existence. And the question is, exactly as you were saying, how do we do that? And that is sort of like the next venture, so to speak, in this sort of conscious capitalism, so to speak.
What role models come to mind, if any, on the method for that collaboration?
It's not so much, in my experience, role models. Role models are like, oh, there's Zeus, you know, Zeus, the Greek god, is kind of good role model, or, you know, Leonardo da Vinci. It's more what models come to mind, right?
Model.
And
yeah.
models are things like, I'm quite inspired by the fractal universe theory and the holonomics, right? And there are kind of things like in management studies, holacracy, right, is a management where everyone's on the same level, right, and they're contributing to each other's purpose, but also working to a grander purpose, and so on. So that kind of like holacratic and holonomic way of approaching things, where it's like you are a self sustainable whole, and so am I, but then those two self-sustainable wholes ought to be able to connect in ways that are very complementary to each other. That's effectively holonomics and holacracy. So that's you know what I'm inspired by, and all the models and that I'm working on. So I'm writing a book called Designed Company, which is a holonomic management approach, because each one of us is like an individual based company. So, you know, I've been working as a freelancer all my life, and I'm like, I'm a self-sustainable, free functioning human, a company of one. And so are you in many respects. But then it's like, if our companies are working together, they would be working in self-sustainable yet grander architecture. You see, there's like a architectural thing. And just as I speak on my Chromecast, the pyramid of Chichen Itza comes on the screen there, right? So so it's like, it's, you know, another self-sustainable structure for a long time. And it's all inspired by sun and movements and cycles of, you know, the interplanetary constellations and connections, right? So so those are kind of things that I've been both studying and writing about and putting more into practical practice. Not to say that I've like absolutely mastered that, but you know, that's what I'm working on mastering.
Do you think that we can or should or look into designing a new ism? Like, for example, the public talks about capitalism, socialism. Do you think that we should design a new ism?
I'm usually against the isms and ists. In fact, I'm against it. Yeah. So any ism, Nazism, feminism, sexism, you know, chauvinism, I wouldn't prescribe to anybody, or, you know, being Islamist or what is it, like feminist, or any ist, I wouldn't, you know, prescribe to anyone either. So for me, it's more like use the model to get further, okay? But don't get hung up on the model.
Dilemma. we are still always using a collective program, which in this case we're calling the ism. Say we're currently using capitalism, whether we want it or not, we're using it, right? So
and you know, they're in some sense labels and terms, right? But there's also another word which is quite okay as an ism, a mechanism. Okay. Mechanism, it's a mechanism for getting somewhere. So you know, there's like, you know, if I was to opt for one that works perhaps quite well, this would be something like anarcho-capitalism, which is, you know, in some sense, this every man for himself co-op kind of concept that my son coined as a phrase. But it's really about like starting with self and self-sovereignty, and then recognizing that even though I don't need anybody else per se, I do find myself both wanting to serve other people, as well as knowing that my profits will come from serving another person who is willing to pay, whether it's birds of paradise feathers or some shells or gold or diamonds or US dollars or UK pounds, whatever it is that exchanges. You know, the other person is willing to pay whatever they have in surplus supply of for what I can give them. Yeah. So exchange.
I think
mechanism.
The question remains on the table, which is if at any point, let's say, the way I would evaluate it is, okay, let's create the ism and let's evaluate it. Of course, as soon as we create it, and if we get happy with it, and we go out there with science, hey, the new ism, whatever it is, let's say creationism or whatever. That sounds so conflictive. It sounds like impossible. Activism, which is let's say non-stoic anger because I'm not in control of. So I opt. That's that. My mind signaled out. I opt out of that, and I go into stoic and just work what's in my control, and just the rest will be the rest. But yeah, my mind would like some answers on that. If at any point we should have an ism designed, in order just to explain a mental program. So I think it is needed. There is. See, capitalism explains everything underneath very easy. Socialism also, and all the other ism also. So, is there a word that explains, what we're developing here in this conversation, or not, or what would be? Because mental programs, which is what they are only claimed and defined when they're labeled.
Yeah. So I think it's. I'm not so sure around like the mental programs. I don't tend to use that phrase as much as other people that I even work with tend to use it, because in some sense, like, you can't escape a program, or you can't escape a pattern. Whatever upgrade you make, you are just in another pattern that's beyond that. So a pattern of love, wisdom, happiness, bliss, enlightenment is also a pattern, right? So there is an element of reprogramming and re-architecting things, right? But the architecture of some turbo folk thing and the architecture of some sustainable grand thing are both architectures, okay? So there is an element to getting to the point where it's like you realize, well, everything is a construct. It's just a question of what level is it a construct on, yeah? And so with things like capitalism, it worked when a lot of people were progressing. And now it's got to a point where a small minority of people progressing exponentially well And a large majority of people are not progressing at all. If not, they're digressing. And then it doesn't work anymore. It's become unsustainable. So the issue is, how do we create a more sustainable construct framework? Okay. And that is a pattern, that is a program, that is a process, that is a mechanism. If I was to choose an ism, it's just more like, what is the mechanism which works for all of us? And it goes back to kind of things that are a lot more around sharing and collaborating and being clear up front in the ways that you mentioned here, which is, you know, one of the reasons why I don't like sales processes, is that oftentimes, most of the time, a quote unquote good salesperson will sell you and all the positive things, like you're going to become a millionaire, you're going to become this, you're going to become all the positives, right? And it's like, yeah, but actually, first of all, there's no real proof for that. And in fact, 1% of people become millionaire through the program X. And then there's these kind of things that you're going to require to be doing and investing and so on. Instead, I'm much more for like, here is a complete transparency around, this is what you're going to have to do to get these potential outcomes for yourself. And there is a X amount of uplift there, might be 2x, 3x, 10x, 100x even, but only if and when you do these kind of things. And it's upfront clear to you what you need to do, if anything, to get that. And usually there is some involvement of doing to get some results, because, you know, just sitting manifesting like, $1 billion, it doesn't work, right? We have to do something.
After the conversation, I think I would like to have one book written with the whateverism, just to explain it, just for it to be out there, just for it to be understood, read, commented on, or such, you know, like, yeah, I think I would like to have that established.
And maybe this is, you know, if I was to be forced at the gunpoint to put this into a word that is ism, it would be something like realism. Okay, realism, as in, let's take all the things that we can identify as real, either through experiments or agreements or observations, which is part of experiments and so on, and contemplations, or, you know, your ayahuasca trips and so on, and say, is this thing real? Yeah. Well, let's work with it. And if it's fake, let's take it out. Yeah. So remove all the fakeness, put in realness, and go forward, because we know that on the real foundation, more things can be built on, more meaningful things. So the ground of all meaning, then more meaning, and so on, in real terms.
You just brought me back to when in architecture, the first times I was starting to see that fake items were starting to be used. Like, for example, parking lot structure with fake windows outside so that it looked like a fake residential. And it smelled so bad when I was looking at fakeness. And today, my God, the levels of fakeness of today, even in human beings, in everything, it's spread all over the place. Yeah. So, yes, it's a beautiful subject.
And people are suffering because they are surrounded, they find themselves surrounded by fakeness, and they have no license to say, that's fake, and I don't want to be partaking in that fakery anymore because it's driving me nuts. It's driving me literally nuts. Yeah. So for me, it's just saying, like, yeah. Good.
I'm going to share with you. This cost me huge amounts of work, and many people won't even know how to value it, but I value it more than anything. Look at my context nowadays. For me, it is very real. It is very the opposite of fake. You see, this one is full of oranges. Can you see it?
Yeah.
It's full of oranges.
Wow.
Look at these babies over here. Well, while we were talking, there's been birds over here all the time. They're right there.
Yeah, I can hear the chirping.
There's Latin on the floor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. this for me is just so real. It's just so, for me, it's very so
Yeah.
important. You know, in the past, what I would have been looking to achieve that would be, hey, can I have a window in my cubicle? Or if not, because many times not, then can I put a poster? And in many offices, believe it or not, that I worked as professional architect, they would tell me, no, you cannot put those pictures in your cubicle. You're altering the look of the office.
How dare you? Yeah, how dare you? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, some levels of that.
That's actually reminds me, as we wrap up, reminds me of even, in one of the client offices, they moved into a different office, and it's a WeWork thing, but WeWork where, you can decorate it yourself, right? And so they had this kind of like a green, yellow, blue, and another room, right? And so they were like, we're running an exercise on giving names to these rooms, right? And we've been thinking, and we're gonna do like famous people, right? So we're gonna give the rooms names based on famous people. And then there was a whole kind of poll run in the company around which names should be given to each room. And they went through the rooms, and there was like, well, the yellow room got the name of Ada Lovelace, and then the green room got the name of Albert Einstein, right? And so on. And then, so that was all voted in. And then people are like, hold on a second, I can't remember which room is which, right? It's just like, they don't care really so much to remember this. And then, so they just scrapped the whole thing. And so we're just going to call them yellow room, green room, blue room. I was like, yeah, just get real about it. Like, you just see what it is, and that's it, Like, go directly to the truth,
Things already have a name before they're named.
Exactly. Yeah.
In architecture, for me, it was the most ridiculous thing when there's a stair in the north, a stair in the south, and a stair in the west, labeling them a stair 2. They already have a name, man. Yes, this is very important.
Listen, my brother, on that note, I thank you so much for this conversation. I'm open to having these almost quite regularly, as often as you can, because I think there's lots more topics that we can explore. So, have a little think about whether you're up for that, because, I appreciate your content.
Yes, definitely. Share with us, where can we find you, your details, so we know who you are and where. I'll share mine.
Sure. So I can be found on jasongrant.in, and then from there, everything is linked up to WhatsApp, to YouTube, to everywhere else. So that's the kind of the way I've, architected this connectivity thing. And where can you be found?
jasongrant.in.in.
Yes.
All right, cool. I'm Andres Rozo, currently in Colombia, based in South Florida. I'm Little Ocean Drop in all platforms. So yeah, that's the way to find me. Just look for Little Ocean Drop on any platform.
Awesome. And look for the links in description as well. So thank you so much, my brother. All the best.
Jason, thanks for the invite. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Peace. Bye.
Cool to be talking. Bye-bye.